And here is the Writer's Almanac for Monday, the 28th of September, 2020. It's a historic day in the history of disease. It was on this day, 1928, that Alexander Fleming, the Scottish bacteriologist, discovered penicillin. And it was 10 years before that, in 1918, a parade to sell war bonds in Philadelphia resulted in a horrible epidemic of what was called the Spanish flu. Though it didn't come from Spain, in fact, the first case was reported at Fort Riley, Kansas, back in March of that year. It was carried to Europe by American soldiers fighting in the war, and there was a big outbreak of it in Spain. It was a terrifying strain of the flu because it attacked young, healthy people in the prime of life. Most of the fatalities were people between the ages of 15 and 40. They came to the hospital suffering high fever, developed pneumonia, the skin started to turn blue from lack of oxygen in the blood, fluid accumulated in the lungs, and many of them were dead within 3 days of first becoming ill. By the end of the summer of 1918, 10,000 people in this country had died from it. There was a big outbreak in Boston in September. And when news of that Boston outbreak reached Philadelphia, doctors called for quarantine. But there was this big parade scheduled for September 28th to sell war bonds. And so the Department of Public Health declined to impose a quarantine. There were 200,000 spectators at the parade, and a few days later, the city was inundated with cases of the flu. The city morgue was overloaded, hundreds of victims, more corpses than they could bury in Philadelphia. They brought in a steam shovel to dig mass graves. Nearly 12,000 Philadelphians died from the flu in 1918. Tens of millions of people died around the world. 600,000 in the United States claimed more lives than all the battles of the First World War combined. It was in London, Alexander Fleming, the bacteriologist, 1928, noticed a blue-green mold growing on a petri dish in his basement laboratory. He'd been cultivating Staphylococcus bacteria in that dish, and this mold was killing the bacterium. It took a team of scientists, however, more than a decade of experimenting to make the strain of penicillin that would become the antibiotic that we know it today. And finally, by the time World War II came around, they had penicillin. Here's a poem for today by Joyce Sutphin, What the Heart Cannot Forget. Everything remembers something. The rock, its fiery bed, cooling and fissuring into cracked pieces, the rub of watery fingers along its edge. The cloud remembers being elephant, camel, giraffe, remembers being a veil over the face of the sun, gathering itself together for the fall. The turtle remembers the sea sliding over and under its belly, remembers legs like wings escaping down the sand under the beaks of savage birds. The tree remembers the story of each ring, the years of drought, the floods, the way things came walking slowly towards it long ago. And the skin remembers its scars, and the bone aches where it was broken. The feet remember the dance, and the arms remember lifting up the child. The heart remembers everything it loved and gave away, everything it lost and found again, and everyone it loved, the heart cannot forget. What the Heart Cannot Forget, a poem by Joyce Sutphin from Coming Back to the Body, published by Holy Cow Press and used by permission here on the Writer's Almanac, funded by donations from listeners like you. Be well, do good work, and keep in touch.